Thank you, Eric. Super exciting. I just found the picture when we've met last to use it as a background for my Zoom room. Questions? Open floor. Cyril.
Yes, thanks, Eric, for the exciting presentation. Being myself owner of Tesla S, it looks good, and I feel that yes. Let's see when this will come to Europe. But question is more related to your point around customer experience, client experience. What have you done? Or what has been your insights in regards to how do you build your showrooms, or how you basically state that you have paid a particular attention? What have you observed, and what makes you different from any traditional, I would say, luxury car maker like the Germans are, or like Tesla is also doing?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, and since I'm not heading up the marketing and sales, I only have fringe insight into that, clearly. But for us, central is to build a tech brand, a luxury and tech brand. We believe that Tesla went a little bit too minimalist on, or is quite minimalist on their product. And we see that many customers, especially the customers for the big German brands, are turned off by that. And they are really missing the luxury amenities, whether it's the functions, the additional features, massage seats, or luxury appointments, the look and feel, the materials. They're missing that in all the EVs that are out there. They already know, like myself, I would love to drive a 911 or something, and I could, but I can't buy it because I can't justify the low performance of a 911. And that's shocking, because the Lucid Air as a nice sedan is just going to blow a 911 out of the water. So the customers already know that electric vehicles are going to be better than their ICE Mercedes S-Class, but they can't get anything equivalent on the market yet. So we're providing an option. Whether the market is going to take, we're going to see, but we're providing a high-tech option. We've got ultimate performance built in. We've got ultimate efficiency, ultimate tech, clearly, right? We've got a big screen array with all the amenities and features that a Tesla has, a custom crafted UI experience. How did we know what to do? We don't know. Nobody has a glass ball. We're just giving our take on what the future of luxury should be. That is our motto. The future of luxury. We are interpreting the old luxury, the legacy automaker luxury new, and pairing that with Silicon Valley technology, the latest state-of-the-art technology, whether it is powertrain or software and user experience. In terms of stores, our North Star there is we want to be the future of luxury. That means you need to have a high quality appearance. Clearly, we're working with architects that have built Apple stores or the likes, fashion brand stores, and we've partnered with them to create that luxury upscale environment. And again, there we are pairing it with the insight into technology. I showed you the vitrine on our first store. Every single store is going to have a tech exhibit where you can see and understand why our cars are so different, or our tech is so different. So that's maybe two angles explained there. Not sure whether that answers your question.
Eric, I have a question. When you look into the latest Tesla models 3Y and you look into the dashboard, it gives you a good feeling how that car will look like without a steering wheel. So when I look into the dashboard of the Lucid Air, and it's beautiful, but it reminds me more of the conventional classic style. But we're steering towards the direction, I mean, we heard yesterday that might not ever happen, but we're steering towards the direction of full autonomy, where we don't have a steering wheel anymore, which is level 5, as much as I know. What's the strategy here?
Yeah. So over the last 3 to 4 years, autonomy has been hyped or was hyped quite a lot, right? In the recent years, 1 or 2 years, the companies have all been going back on their plans and reversing their timelines. So level 5 autonomy is a real tough challenge. And while you can make a car drive safely, there is always the issue of faults happening, right? Just a little code error that gets triggered in a situation that you weren't able to test, or a sensor faults out, a wire harness has a problem, something happens, and then somebody dies. And you don't want to be that car company that has to stand in front of the public or the courts and tell them, well, we just thought it was safe enough. So that's why we put in the fully redundant architecture, unlike the other competitor in the Bay Area that doesn't have that, in order to make sure that in case a sensor fails, we have backup. In case a battery fails, we have backup. In case the inverter or the DC-DC fails, we have backup. So key is for level 3, 4, and 5 to have redundancy built in. We have that in here already. Whether you can unleash your cars that are fully redundant onto humanity safely, I think that's going to take a little bit longer. We see a couple autonomous shuttles driving around in areas that are essentially designated for that. But what about the Escalade that just rams your car, right? Are you going to take the battle up in court and say that your car was safe enough and it was actually the Escalade's fault or the autonomous car's fault? I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around, was it really safe to unleash the car? Maybe the passenger would have accelerated away, out of the way. Maybe he would have hit the brakes in a different manner. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth there. We don't intend to be a global first leader in autonomy. We are ready to be a fast follower once legislation is out there, once it's clear how courts will deal with those kind of cases. And there's this often cited example of when the car needs to make a choice, right? Does it run into the child that is running across the street with a ball? Does it run into the lamp post, potentially killing the owner of the vehicle? Or does it run into the adult on the side of the road? I don't know, right? That's an ethical question or decision that the car will have to make in a split second. And until it's clear how these will be handled in courts and in the public, we're a nascent EV brand. We don't want to expose ourselves to that level of risk. And we also feel that there is going to be a large enough audience to buy our volumes. We're not aspiring to be a Volkswagen with 10 million cars anytime soon. It's going to take 10 or 20 years for us to get there. So we're taking a more conservative approach because it's already a massive endeavor to launch a car company, a brand, and a vehicle. If you've ever done it, you know what I'm talking about.
Any more questions?
So just me again, Nikki. Maybe I don't know if Mario can build on that. Based on what Eric shared, will it be fine to say that potentially the autonomous driving or might be more dedicated to public transportation in design, I would say in design area, and then you have a segment like Lucid is targeting, which is keeping clean vehicle with high performance and still that luxury and really driver experience to push to the I would say to the maximum. Will it be potentially this kind of segmentation in a market with the mass transit more and more available with autonomous vehicle, and then have I would say some segment like Lucid with a super high profile, high tech, and a real driving experience for those who want to remain in their car.
I personally think there is going to be many years of transition, if even every single person will transition. I mean, nowadays you have a huge following of people that are driving old timers. Maybe driving a car is going to be an old timer thing in 20 years. It's going to take many years, and typically the life of a vehicle is about 7 years, maybe 8. Tesla Model S is now 8 years old. The Volkswagen brand, Daimler, and so on, they typically have a 7-year lifetime. I don't think that in those 7 years, 100% of the vehicles will be converted. And mass transport or the ride sharing applications, I do think there's a good place for them to adopt more of the autonomy. Those sensor suites are really expensive. And of course, if you get killed in Ubers, that's not better than getting killed in Mercedeses. Nobody wants to foot that bill or face that in public. But the likelihood, I personally believe, is larger in ride sharing, or maybe in urban areas, city taxi type applications, the Navia, I guess, these kind of shuttle buses, like they're driving around in Las Vegas, maybe lower speed on pre-described routes. I think there is a very good space for that. But whether you want to drive up to Lake Tahoe or on your expedition trip across Canyonlands or somewhere with a fully autonomous car, I'm not sure about that. I think there's a large space for driver cars, luxury cars, performance cars. Would you go onto the Autobahn? I mean, our car will easily 250 kilometers an hour on the Autobahn. I'm not sure I'd want to hand that over to the computer yet. So there's going to be a longer transition phase.
I have a question too. You have a lot of sensors, LiDARs on it. Why do you not think you are a first mover in this area?
It's largely because of the time to mature such a algorithm-based system and validation miles. So the way Tesla has done it, actually, when I was at Tesla and we launched the Model S, there was not a single ADAS sensor on the car. I mean, nobody knows that anymore. They think, wow, Tesla has always been this tech company with autonomy. The only camera that was on the car was the rearward-facing camera for reversing. That's the only camera that was on the Model S. Then in 2014, we launched ultrasonic sensors, or was it late 2013? Ultrasonic sensors. That was the first ADAS system on the car. And then there came a radar, and then there came the camera. So it's taken many years for Tesla just to put the sensors onto the car. In all those years, they've gathered data from those cars. They've been able to over-the-air upload data, and they're running algorithms based on the real-world data. Now, we haven't had a fleet out there. We now would have to launch a car from day one with the same sensor and software suite as a Tesla, and without having thousands of vehicles out on the road gathering data for many years, and algorithms being run on virtual machines for years, I don't think it's realistic to assume we could do that. If you have followed Waymo, they've put, I think, $10 billion into autonomy, and they've been working on this for 10 years, and they are not fit for rolling out the complete fleet US-wide. They still have island trials, and that's $10 billion and 10 years. I think it's still going to take them another 5 years, maybe 10, as Mr. Kraftschick actually said on a bankers forum, between 5 and 10 years until they themselves would feel confident in rolling it out large scale. And they already have tens of thousands of I-Pacers and Pacificas running around with their sensor suites. And we've barely spent over $1 billion. Who are we to justify or claim that will be there. So as said, we've got the sensor suite because that's something that can be done today. The OTA capability can be done today, but the miles that we have to drive and collect and tune our algorithms, or maybe partner with the likes of a Waymo or an Uber, that our main financer also has a big stake in. Maybe that's the right path for us.
Eric, as you heard during the introductions, three of us that are here with you today are working with Oxford Leadership on a leadership and culture change project with PSA Group. And so I'd like you to actually think back, maybe to your time with Volkswagen, as well as to any current networks you have in the OEMs like PSA. Well, how would you characterize the mindset of those executives in relation to what you've laid out here and how you see the future? What are the major obstacles, to really coming to grips with the future that's, increasingly upon us? But also maybe what are some strengths they have, or assets they have to work with, given their position?
Yeah, that's a much asked question. So operating at a incumbent OEM, what does that actually mean? You've invested tens of billions of dollars into plants, into plant infrastructure, tools, powertrains, models, customer perception. So you've got a huge amount of assets that are still banking on the old products. And they're making the money right now. So how can you say, let's scrap all of that and change radically and it's all gonna be fine, right? I think that's the biggest obstacle. This would require radical transformation. The only company that is sort of approaching that is actually Volkswagen, hit by the diesel scandal. So it may be a blessing for them, but it's not running smooth, right? If you see what's happening with these. The old forces of saying, well, it's worked until now and we'll just have to incrementally optimize. First we brought in the hybrids, now we're onto the plug-in hybrids, then we're going to find algae that are producing diesel, and then we can sell the cars as being clean again, right? Those forces are really, really strong because that guarantees that you don't have to question what you've been doing all along, and you don't have to question whether you are still the right person for the role, right? A diesel engine developer, you would not say, well, I should now become an electric motor specialist, because how would he do that? Or I'm going to hand in my resignation because clearly I will be obsolete in a couple of years and I want to help my company. So nobody would do that. And there are just thousands of them. And it's human. And I don't fault anybody for being like that. If I had stayed, maybe I would have also tried to drag on the show as long as possible. But now we've got the 95 grams per kilometer, right? That's a real big hurdle. And the way to get there is needs to be radical. All the fleets are at 130 plus grams per kilometer. Even the French, sorry to say that, but as a German car enthusiast, we always live for the Autobahn. And that's of course hard on the Germans. Every single car has to be Autobahn capable and has to go up to 200 or more kilometers an hour. I think that's a burden on the German OEMs, actually, because they can't imagine an EV doing the same without just running empty in short time, because the energy need goes up exponentially with the square, essentially, because of the drag, the aero drag. And that means you have to have much more charging stop. And if every single charging stop is 30 to 45 minutes, that's going to be unbearable for a German car enthusiast on the Autobahn. Here it's really hard for them to transform their thinking. The French, they went into smaller motors and less horsepower and try to be more efficient there. So I think the fleet averages are lower in France, but they are still nowhere near where they need to go, despite all those drawbacks on the fun to drive or being competitive with the Germans. Now, electrification can get there. And we've just re-engineered the motors and transmissions and inverters to actually be super efficient in high-speed applications. And that's the art that you need to be open to. You need to bring in the brightest minds that are willing to build up a motor ground up. And ground up means really going down to physics and simulate the electromagnetic flux inside each winding of the motor. It means simulating the heat transfer through the stators and the rotor lamination stacks. It means going into finite element analysis on the housings and making all those simulations jointly between 3 different departments at OEMs right now. You need to bring those specialists together and let them create something ground up. And that's where they have a real problem, the old OEMs, because they've diversified or they've built all these different line organizations for the different commodities, and it's really hard to break through. It was always a real challenge if Volkswagen wanted to speed up their development timeline for whatever mid-engine coupe or so, right? That was a dream, and then it was shut down because it was not possible to shorten the timeline, or the investment was too high. And when we try to do that, we try to say, okay, let's go and pick best out of each of those line organizations and put them into a project house where they can, in isolation of all the naysayers and the slow guys that want to go at 430 or sooner, they can just thrash out a project faster. And it failed because nobody wanted to give their brightest minds away. Nobody wanted to hand out the responsibility for a potential victory, right? So you have to think about psychology in many, many ways. And that's stifling the progress in all OEMs. And only if they've done massive top-down decrees or drives to break through that and try to get their management on board, only then they've seen that it can work. But yeah, will they be able to maintain that drive if the first vehicle flops? We saw that on i3, right? i3, i8, BMW, they built a complete brand. When I was at Volkswagen, I thought they got it. Volkswagen back then said an electric car that has to be a Golf. It has to be a Golf because Golf is Volkswagen. If we don't make our first electric car a Golf, we're no longer Volkswagen. So they made the e-Golf. And clearly it was just converting a regular Golf into an electrified Golf, which came with huge downsides, massive investment, massive cost, and they didn't sell. And the range was, 90 miles or something like that, right? Insane. They spent over €1 billion to electrify a Golf, and nobody bought it. So they had to subsidize it.
If that's okay for you, if you have time, we have one more question from Johan.
Okay, sure.
I'm
dragging it out.
I go a bit into the computer vision part. That's my field, and I'd be really interested, as you mentioned, one of the biggest challenges, and I can see that in the number of patent applications I have to examine in the field, is the training data, right? How to collect training data, and the car has to drive, years to collect the sufficient amount to train these, convolutional neural networks and all these things. Now, what I see in the field is this sort of artificial training data. So you generate virtual environments, virtual cities, the car drives in those places and creates this kind of synthetic artificial training data. Do you think this is like a good approach? Is it safe? And what is like your take on the biggest challenges in this area of computer vision related to autonomous driving?
Yeah, it's actually a huge hype and huge marketplace, as you were saying. Many companies are purely generating scenes essentially for simulators. And we can then put our system into those scenes and drive those scenes. So replicate what the car saw, the other car saw. And clearly it has a place in development. Now, since those are only so many data sets that you can run through, you can take advantage of them, but it's not going to be 100% replacement for augmenting that with real world data. Also, since it's purely a digital simulation, you need to also test the physical vehicle interaction. And we can build up vehicle dynamics models. So how quickly can a car stop under which conditions, when it's rained, when the road is slippery, and so on. But you do need to train your own vehicle on real life data to augment that data set. It is a help, and we are using that technology also. Clearly, you have to pay a lot of money to get access to that data, and you have to build your simulation tools and use a lot of cloud computing. But it's a way to speed up. We're doing that. No substitute for real miles.
Thanks.
Marcus, you wanted to raise a question, and Eric, you have to say like, cut it. I need to go to my family.
No, I'm still fine. It's very interesting to see or to hear questions and
Eric, this is
try to
fascinating.
answer.
Personally, I've got a reasonable collection of old Ferraris, but I'm really intrigued with what work has been done as regards residual values and depreciation. You know, the men in grey suits, and whether they're upgrade paths or any sort of consideration so that the mass market will see the acquisition of the vehicle as an investment, as opposed to the sort of the toy for the disposables to be seen to be having a wonderful vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. I haven't touched on that too much, other than mentioning OTA, over the air updates. But clearly that's one of our business strategies. We are going to launch a product next year that's fairly mature, and it has a wide range of functions and behaviors and capabilities. But as we gain more mileage and more insight into how can we eke out more miles of range per kilowatt hour, right? How can we optimize the HVAC system in the car to still make the customer feel happy but use less electrons? Or how can we adapt to temperature changes by using internet weather data or live weather data from our onboard sensors? We will be training the controls and the algorithms of the car constantly for many years, and update over the air the car to extend the range, extend the life. We'll have digital twins of each battery for every single car in the cloud. So we'll know the state of health, state of energy of every single battery pack. We'll be able to give a great estimation of residual value of the battery pack when it comes to financing models. And we can negotiate better deals with lease providers because we know exactly how many miles are still left on these battery packs. We can tune brake behavior, right? Brakes are a huge drag on efficiency. We've already made the brakes less draggy than typical brakes. But how often do you need to use the brakes? We use regenerative braking, which puts the electrons back into the battery pack, and that can be tuned and optimized over the next months and years and updated. There are so many sensors and actuators in each car that we're inventing new functionalities that we will then download onto the car and keep the car fresh. The screens can change in a blink, right? Overnight, you can get additional buttons, additional functions. And if you have driven a Tesla, they have already done that, right? If you look at the Sentry mode, which is the surveillance mode, of Teslas, that has upgraded since inception, and it's getting better by the day. And we have all those features and behaviors and a roadmap for those lined up too.
Nikki, can I ask a follow-on or not?
Sure.
Eric, does this guide us into a different pricing model? So because you have so much data, can the pricing move away from a straight lease based upon miles covered irrespective of stress, and start becoming a pricing based upon stress type model? Is that looking like it can become the case?
In principle, it could become a use-based or app use-based pricing model over time, but well, we're a startup. We don't have the backing of the big lenders and banks yet. Just to get millions of dollars to pre-finance the cars, to then go on a per month or per use per mile, whatever base. That may come in the future. We're not ready yet for that, but we're thinking about it. What would be our ways of doing it? Yeah, we're not there yet. Others are propagating it. I doubt that startups will be able to pull this off.
Martin, you wanted to say something. Go ahead, Martin.
So, okay. I have a question about the big data collections. So if Waymo and Tesla and maybe Amazon with the new startup what they just bought, they're collecting a huge amount of data. So, and what's happened if they just use the data for themselves? Is it possible for a startup or an old style company like the Germans to catch up with them?
Yeah, good question. It's really hard, and it will depend on the willingness to share. I think Elon just 1 or 2 days ago again tweeted that he is open to sharing data, software, batteries, and charging network with everybody else. The question is at what price or which arrangement and so on. But clearly he's mentioned a willingness, so maybe. Whether Waymo will enter into such a model remains to be seen. That would be a good source, surely. And right now, all these startups that are data gatherers and map builders, they clearly want to monetize, so they're not going to share it freely. They're going to just make money out of it. So there will be ways to acquire at least parts of that data that is generated over time.
But I think, okay, Elon Musk is a special case so far. I understood it, a little bit crazy and so on. But if you see that the other big companies, they have a clear strategy. And of course, so far I understood the exponential strategy of them, they will be going to monopolize the things. So why should there survive other companies?
Well, because a behemoth is not necessarily, Goliath is not necessarily the only survivor, right? David managed to fell Goliath, and yeah. Elon is chopping away at the Goliath also. Elon is chopping away sales in the US. I mean, at some points, their luxury car sales dropped dramatically. I don't think they made a lot of money anymore. He is ramping up dramatically the volume. Many people are buying Teslas rather than Volkswagens or PSAs or Fords. And that's because he's got advanced technology. Now, will they be able to catch up to the same level of efficiency? Because I do think that efficiency gives you an edge. If your motor is more efficient, you need less batteries to create the range, which makes your product cheaper. That can be a real issue for big OEMs. If they are lagging behind in the vital technologies, they will always have a higher cost structure despite their scale, right? Despite their ability to pump out millions of vehicles out of their factories. They know how to build cars, clearly. But still the delta there, I mean, it's about $500 to $1,500 of labor per car, depending on which class of vehicle you're talking. If your tech can take out $3,000 of battery value and of powertrain value, then you clearly have a leg up, right? So I don't believe that the behemoth is necessarily the only survivor. We have our place in the market, and that's just being at the forefront of technology, whether it is just standard EV technology and an alternative offering of a product. Look at Porsche. They are not a leader in autonomous at all. They just have a cool product, iconic, a driver's car, performance, and they find their followers, 300,000 every year. And in the autonomous space, as you said, if BMW, Daimler, and Audi were to create a conglomerate, first of all, they'd face problems with antitrust, which they've already encountered many times, right? On the other hand, they'll then live on an island, and they'll not be as innovative as the small startup companies or the Waymos or the Googles or the Ubers, because the big company thinking will try to wall off between BMW and Daimler and Audi with firewalls, as they've done in every single project where they've worked together, whether it was their seats, whether it's platform sharing, whether it's motor sharing. They always wall themselves off and wall themselves in. So I don't think that's going to be a big threat.
Can I a question again? But I think so far I understood Elon Musk announced half a year ago, I don't, maybe a little bit more, that the new Tesla generation will be in this level to make with the car business. I don't know if you have heard about it. So people buy the car, and then the car is driving all the day, and you earn money with the car.
Yeah.
How realistic do you think is this, and when would this be possible?
That's a tough question. I mean, Elon has been propagating full autonomy, full self-driving since, 2016 or something like that, right? It's 4 years later, we don't have it yet. Many people have paid $7,000 for full autonomy, which they never got, but they got a great feature set. So you could argue he's delivered a great ADAS system, and many people were happy with it because it was better than what others did, but it was never fully autonomous. Now, if you let Model 3s loose on the road at the current stage, I personally don't think they're ready for that. When will they be ready? Elon is a pusher. It could be in 1 year or 2 years, or he has to keep it back for another year. So I can't possibly make a good guess there.
But still, let it be 5 years. It's okay.
Yeah.
So, but if this situation comes, and I read an article, and they say if this situation comes, it's the situation then that you need only 20% to build cars, and you don't need the other one because the cars driving the whole day, and you don't produce so much cars.
Understand. Well, somewhat that is a matter of adoption, right? Will you get rid of your car? Will every single one on this call get rid of your car and just jump into an Uber all day long?
Yeah.
Right? If you live in an inner city, clearly, if you live in Munich or in Wien or in London, why would you have a car if you don't really drive out? If you live somewhere a little bit more on the countryside, I think you want a car. So again, this utopian vision of everybody just using shared vehicles may take 50 years or longer to mature. I think there's going to be a mixed ownership model where in inner cities and in highly populated areas, those shared autonomous services will catch on, and it's awesome, because then you can just let yourself be driven to the airport and blah, blah, blah. But when you want to drive out somewhere else, I think people will still maintain ownership. Maybe not 2 or 3 cars, maybe they can reduce 1 or 2 of their owned cars. If you're living in less densely populated areas, the ownership model will still be very strong. So over many, many years, there's going to be a transition.
I'd like to chime in with a quick personal experience. There are 3 business models with car sales, right? Or with car companies. First is sell a car, then after sales, and the used cars. And I experienced this. I was consulting Saab, and I was working with Saab, the car company, the Swedish car company. And the interesting thing is, everyone who buys a car doesn't want to own this car forever, right? You always buy your car, and one of the arguments is, will someone buy the car from me if I don't want it anymore? So when a car company goes away from the market, no one, of course, buys a new car because there are no new cars, but also no one buys a used car because they never get rid of it anymore. And the whole system crashes within very, very fast. So the cars just get off the street because no one wants to have the cars anymore. The moment the moment we knew that the Saab was over, everyone just wanted to get rid of their cars. And of course, not everyone was managed to get rid of the cars. So it's basically within 3 months, 80% of the cars from that make disappear from the streets. So there will be a natural reduction of cars in the streets anyways, because of the massive amount of cars that are just stand still because no one wants them.
Yeah, maybe one more point to that is actually, that's one of the drivers why we went into the luxury segment, right? We are not aspiring to make Polos or 205 Citroëns, right? Peugeots. We want to stay clear of the mass market and the cheap cars, because we believe that those are the first ones to be converted. The people that buy a 10 or 15 or 20,000 euro car, they are typically the ones that really have to scramble to get that money together to even afford mobility. And if they can jump into a shared and not owned ride for the couple of rides they need to do, why would you shell out or save 10 or 15,000 euros? So we see there's going to be a big issue on the low end of the market. On the high end, the luxury market, people just have so much money. They will buy 20,000 airs or 40 or 50,000 airs because they want to have it, because it's beautiful, because they want to have the most performing or efficient or whatever. And then the next car will be the same. It's the same people that go and just buy themselves a beautiful handbag. You can buy a handbag for $5, but do you really want to own that? For people that buy a $5 handbag, it's purely because they need it to carry stuff around. But people that buy a $1,000 or $2,000 handbag, they are proud of wearing or carrying that handbag. They want to buy into the luxury aspect. So the shared autonomy is going to kill the low end of the market.
Eric,
that's how I see it.
Thank you so much. We've been stretching your time by 20 minutes. I don't want to abuse it over capacity. Thank you so much for taking time and sharing your thoughts and visions and introducing us to that amazing new company and car. I'm excited to drive one. So
you do.
I guess next time travel to San Francisco will be possible. It will also be one car in the street or one car drivable. That being said, enjoy the rest of your vacation if you're staycay. All the others, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed the session. Have a great rest of the night, and see you soon.